Welcome back, everyone, to Then and Now. I'm Julian Zelizer of the Longview.
And I'm Jonathan Alter of Old Goats.
And I was thinking this week, I was watching a little bit of the hearings with Attorney General Pam Bondi, and I was thinking back to another Attorney General who often comes up in lists that are not so favorable. And that's John Mitchell, who was the Attorney General for President Richard Nixon from 1969 to 1972 before taking over part of his reelection campaign. Mitchell had been the manager of Nixon's first campaign. He, as Attorney General, had been involved in a lot of very controversial decisions, including trying to stop the Pentagon Papers, wiretapping American citizens, going after opponents, and also anti-war protesters and even civil rights protesters. So he's a very controversial figure. Things only got worse when he headed the committee to reelect the president. It would become he would be indicted for having been part of the Watergate burglary and for perjuring himself when the investigations happened, and he would end up serving 19 months in prison and remains a symbol of what went wrong with the Department of Justice under Nixon and a kind of basis for reforms that had been in place really until President Trump served in office. So, how do you think of the comparison in these two?
Well, they really, on the surface, they have absolutely nothing in common. Mitchell was a crook, but he was a serious person, and he didn't go up on Capitol Hill and insult people left and right. He did do something that Pam Bondi has also done, which is to lie his ass off, and eventually, went to prison in part for perjury, as you mentioned. I Mitchell in the context of two very different women, one of whom was my boss's boss for many, many years, the proprietor of the Washington Post and Newsweek, where I worked, the late, great Catherine Graham. And Mitchell famously told Carl Bernstein when Bernstein called in to ask about a Watergate story, Mitchell famously said, Katie Graham's going to get her tit caught, fat ringer. So he could talk the way Pam does, but not in person, not in public. This is something that has really changed. They're both criminals, and they both have corrupted Justice Department. The nature of our public discourse is different. The other woman who comes to mind with Mitchell is his wife, Martha Mitchell. And she was talking to reporters, especially Alan Thomas of UPI, telling them everything, telling them basically everything about Watergate as it's unfolding. And Mitchell hired Goon to literally pull his wife's phone out of the socket. In those days, it was a cord. And try to shut her up. But he was unable to do so. And she played a big role in his demise. I think the basic outlines of the story, which are corruption of the Department of Justice, there are real comparisons. And the question is, when do we get to rebuild the independence of the Department of Justice that did take place under Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter after Mitchell went to prison?
I think that's right. And just to conclude, I think it's also a reminder of when a president is not prioritizing guarding the Department of Justice and its autonomy in prosecutions and the kind of work that it does. It's very quick it could quickly unravel and become a tool of the president rather than a tool for the nation to uphold the law. Anyway, that's Then and Now. And John, thanks for joining. And we'll talk next
Thank you,
week
Julian.
about whatever issues in the news. Bye bye.
Bye bye.